everybody, welcome back to Drafty Toons, the Drafty Quarters Productions animation podcast. Today I have with me
Trevor
and
Shane.
And this is a special spooktacular episode.
Spooky.
Too spoopy, because we did Castlevania Season 1.
Castlevania.
That's pretty good, actually.
There was actually less of that kind of accent than I was expecting.
Yeah.
It was very diverse accents, which was kind of nice that it was able to differentiate villages and part of, this very large country.
So this was your first time watching it?
Yes, it was my first time watching it.
Shane, you'd already seen it?
Yeah, I think I've seen like 2 episodes maybe of the second season as well.
Okay. I've finished everything that's out so far, which is, I bring it up because, to go back to your point, it's not very much of that accent because Dracula's not in this first season very much.
Yeah, okay, okay,
Dracula's
fair enough.
dope.
He comes back a lot in season 2, and you get a lot of that. There's also like way more vampires in season 2.
Yeah, we only saw 2 vampires total
in this
season.
Yes.
Dracula and Alucard.
Son of Dracula.
Fuck yeah.
Also
Alucard.
just Dracula spelled backwards.
Hey, his name was
God, you're
Adrian
right.
Tepes.
You didn't realize that?
I didn't realize that. I wrote it down in my notes like 4 times, and I never realized that Alucard is Dracula spelled backwards. Oh, I'm an idiot.
Perfect.
Yeah, but his actual name is Adrian Tepes.
Yep.
And Dracula's full name is Vlad Dracula Tepes. Right?
Yep.
There we go. So,
Because it's like Vlad the Impaler or whatever.
a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
There was multiple impaled bodies in the very first scene, right? But they were all.
As soon as you open on the show.
Yep. As soon as which is kind of cool, I guess. It was very artistic. That there's some good ray lighting kind of coming on.
It really
too.
sets the tone for the whole series. Like, hey, shit's about to happen.
Also call back to like some of the cinematics from the games.
Yeah, there was a lot of those. That was one of the notes I had written down. Like, I liked a lot of the nods and like the effects that they used from the games.
Yes.
Like, I didn't play the games a lot, like hardly any, but I've seen like footage and stuff, and specifically during the fight with Trevor Belmont and Alucard.
Oh yeah.
When he like does the like shifting.
Oh yeah.
And it shows the multiple copies of himself. Like, I know that's pretty heavy. In the games.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So in Castlevania Symphony of the Night, you play as Alucard. You can play as Simon or Trevor. I can't remember which one. After you've beaten it, and you have to like make some special condition in one of the fights, I think, to get one of the Belmonts to play later in like a new game plus.
It's like
so
an
new game
unlocked
plus
character.
plus. I don't know. Yeah. But there's like spells you can do, and that's one of them is the like teleport where you like gets the red outline and then like does like a weird blurry shift where it's not actually blurry, it's just like multiple gradient colored copies of himself along the line you teleport on.
On with that too, when they were kind of going down in the catacombs to Alucard, they had multiple traps that were like just straight out of a video game. They had ones that just like smashed together, and I was like, that's exactly what happened.
Straight out of those video games.
Yeah, straight out of those video games. Like basically any Metroidvania is going to have a trap like that. You know?
Yeah. The only thing they didn't have, which I mean they might have later, that was big in Castlevania was the spikes. There's usually just like an area where there's just spikes on the ground, and you have to either have some way of going above them, or in Symphony of the Night there was spike breaker armor where you could just like charge through it and break all the spikes, so then you could walk through it later.
Yeah, well, you'll definitely throughout this as we get more video game stuff, you're gonna have to tell us, because I avoid Metrovanias like the plague.
Oh yeah,
honestly, as a game, like when I play games, I'm just not into them at all. Metrovanias are action RPG platformers, normally pretty high difficulty.
Right.
It's high stress, a lot of no hand holding at all.
No hand holding. That's
that's a big thing.
It's sort of like their blessing and their curse at the same time, because it makes them extremely difficult and like a really fast learning curve. you can usually make it through the first couple rooms, and then you're like, shit. What the hell am I supposed to do now?
Yeah, they're non-linear a lot of the time, so you can end up in a like end game portion of the game within like your first few minutes, and you're like, I made a wrong turn somewhere.
Right.
You know?
Especially Castlevania Symphony of the Night, because you start with a bunch of powers and armor and weapons and stuff, and then you get in a boss battle in the first like 5 minutes, and all of it gets taken away from you.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, you have all this stuff, and you don't know what the fuck to do with it. And then you have to fight someone, and you have to lose, and they take it all away. It's really awesome. If you guys haven't played it, it's on Xbox Live. So
it just recently it was up. It was like one of the gold free games.
Oh, was it? I already have it, so because I played it. The first time I played it was actually on 360 when it first went on Xbox Live.
It was originally like a PlayStation game.
Yeah, I think it came
PlayStation
out in 97 or something like
or
that.
Original PlayStation.
But you
play it
PlayStation.
on PlayStation 2. I watched Billy play it when we were in high school.
Yeah,
and I was like, "This is fucking crazy."
It says it was on PlayStation, PlayStation Portable, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3. It was probably on basically any platform that you play.
in the last like 20 years.
Yeah.
So,
as well as many emulators if you legally already have a copy of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, if you already have bought it once or twice, go ahead and download it on your computer so you can play with a keyboard. I don't know, that would be a pain in the ass.
You know, I personally I'm a Guitar Hero controller player.
Oh,
so,
yeah. You play everything with a Guitar Hero controller. Are you one of the guys that's like, can I beat Halo before my TV melts in the oven using a Guitar Hero controller?
Yeah. I saw one the other day was like, can I beat Halo with a Guitar Hero controller in a McDonald's before they kick me out?
That's crazy.
Yeah. We got to make YouTube videos like that, guys.
Yeah, sure.
No, since we're talking about the games, so I haven't really played much of them. You said you played Symphony of the Night.
I played Symphony of the Night. I haven't played any of the other ones. Well, I've played them, but Symphony of the Night is the only one that I've like played thoroughly and like beaten and stuff.
Sure. And I was looking up some stuff for this show here, and apparently the series is based on largely Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, and then there's a little bit that crosses over with Symphony of the Night.
Right.
And I just was like, oh, okay, that's probably why I haven't heard a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of like a lot of Alucard's stuff is from Symphony of the Night.
Yeah. One of the other things I saw interesting just here in the trivia was that with a 79% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, Castlevania became the first ever adaptation of a video game to not get a rotten score, 59% or lower.
It's one that deserves it. Like, Castlevania has been a staple of gaming, like, forever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not Pong or anything like that, but you're not going to fucking adapt Pong in any kind of meaningful way. Like,
are you telling me the World of Warcraft movie didn't score higher than this? Because that's a tragedy.
You know, I forgot that there was a World of Warcraft movie.
Yeah, that is.
Go play your WoW Classic. Get the fuck out of here.
Well, all right. Leaving, guys. Bye. See ya.
Man.
All right. Well.
And he's back.
I'm back. He brought me donuts this morning, so I feel obligated to stay for the length of this show now. Whole thing created by Warren Ellis. It says program creator Warren Ellis. I saw him listed as executive producer. He also wrote the show as well. Warren Ellis, fairly prolific comic book writer.
Yes.
Yeah, you guys were real excited about that, but I had no idea who he was.
Well, he's the creator of my favorite comic book series, Transmetropolitan, which is a futuristic. Cyberpunk's not the right word, but
it's sort of cyberpunk.
Yeah, cyberpunk's probably okay. Not so
like
future
dystopian.
It's a very dystopian thing about a writer, Spider Jerusalem, who's sort of the last vestige of the truth and like good journalism in an otherwise like really shitty world.
Yeah.
As well as you said, he's done what else?
He's done some Marvel stuff, Astonishing X-Men, Thunderbolts, Moon Knight. one of the best and most influential recently stories in Iron Man. He did the Extremis story arc, which was also the basis of the MCU film Iron Man 3. He created the Authority and Planetary for Wildstorm, which is interesting. A couple of the first gay characters in DC were from the Authority. Fuck if I can remember their names. Midnighter and Apollo?
Nathan's going to be pissed.
Yeah.
We brought it all back to comics.
Yeah, well, I mean, a comic book writer wrote this shit, so it's not like it was a stretch. It wasn't like when we were trying to fucking connect, like, Quick and the Dead to comic books or anything. You know?
That's true.
Well,
Sam Raimi directed this. He directed comic book movies. Boom.
Yeah.
Got it.
But I think the whole thing had, even in its animation style, had a little bit of a graphic novel kind of comic book feel to it.
A lot
the whole
of
time
it did,
too.
yeah.
But I think a very interesting thing that we talked a little bit about while we were watching it, along with Transmetropolitan, the Extremis storyline from Iron Man deals with like transhumanism and like science and versus humanity and things like that.
Yeah.
Which does have themes in this show, which is more like confusing science.
It's more science versus religion.
Yeah, it's like science versus religion, but like being afraid of the advancement of technology and of knowledge and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Calling people witches because, you know, they're treating diseases with concoctions of chemicals as opposed to just preying on it and shit like that.
Yep.
Yeah. So maybe we should kind of go through like the basic setup for the series.
Yeah,
because now we're
just
starting
like
to talk about themes,
nebulously about it.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So it's the year, is it 1474? I think, something like that. A little bit earlier. It starts at the mid 1400s, late 1400s.
1476.
That's when that shit starts going down.
It's when the game takes place.
In Wallachia. Wallachia. There we go. I'm so bad at pronouncing that. I'm going to say it bad like 8 times.
The reason you say Chia is because that's how it was spelled.
Wallachia. Yeah, that's right.
But it's just a hard K sound.
Yeah, Wallachia.
A young woman by the name of Lisa finds Dracula's castle, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then asks Dracula basically to use his vast scientific equipment to try and better humanity. And Dracula, for whatever reason, kind of gets smitten with this girl. Because
she was cute.
I mean, she was cute as heck. I mean, I'm not into 2D girls at all.
You're on the wrong show.
All right, well, this went in an interesting direction. But she's also not afraid of him.
Yeah,
right?
And
she's not just like, oh, well, you know, I knew what I was walking into, so I've got like a silver stake and a cross and, you know, all this dumb shit. He's like asking her and like all these things to see like her opinion of him has been colored by, you know, legend or myth about him. Mm-hmm. And she's just like, no, I just want knowledge. I just want to like, and why are you being impolite? I just walked into your house.
Don't be a dick.
Coat.
Yeah, exactly.
And
he straight
like,
up talks back to this like almost like all powerful being.
Yeah,
like, it's crazy.
And he's like grossly amused by it and curious as well. I think is a big part of why he didn't just like rip her heart out immediately.
Yeah, right. But so Vlad lets her into his castle and therefore into his life.
Yes.
And they get married eventually at some point.
They have a child.
They have a child. Oh, so I think it was 1455 then, because it's like 25 years later. Vlad is off exploring the world because Lisa's told her to, and you know they're happy together.
Right.
He returns back, and they are burning her at the stake for being a witch. The church is,
but they've already burned her by the time he returns.
Yeah,
home.
exactly.
Yeah, he comes home to the smoldering ruins of their house. And then gets informed by the little old woman that actually appreciated her for being a doctor as opposed to a witch. And then...
Or just being, you know, a pawn of the church and like, well, just pray about it and God will save you from your, you know, cough or whatever the hell I gave you medicine for.
Yeah, so he comes home, and then she's the one that has the unfortunate privilege of being the messenger for Dracula to tell him that. Hey,
I wouldn't want to tell him that.
Hey, they kidnapped your wife, and
they burned her alive.
She's dead now.
Yeah.
So Dracula, understandably pissed off about this, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, understand. Basically appears in the fire and tells them that he is going to raise an army of the fucking damned and kill you all in a year, so you better flee or you're dead.
Yep.
So here's the question I have about that specifically. He says he's going to come back in a year, but then it's actually like 5 years later that he comes back?
No, it's a year.
No, it's the people say it's a little over a year, but I also thought that might be like a funny thing about them being ignorant. Like maybe he has like a more accurate measure of the year because he's knowledgeable of science and shit. And they were like, "Oh, it's been over a year and we're still here. Pff, fuck that guy."
Okay, so the impression I got was that it was like 5 years later because they'd already had this celebration like several times over.
No, I don't know where you got that impression since it says 1 year later.
Yeah, it literally says 1475 is when she dies, and it says 1476 is
And
the
then
next.
the priest says, "It's been a little over a year since..."
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah,
it might
I
not
guess
have
I
been the
just
exact
missed all
date,
that
but
completely.
Dracula could have also been waiting because they were celebrating that day,
Yeah.
the day they killed the witch.
Yeah.
So he might have like known that was happening and waiting for the dramatic
Either
effect,
way.
you know?
Yeah. While the archbishop...
He's like, I can make a
is
couple
like-
more gargoyles real quick.
Yeah.
Like, let's...
I can raise a couple more demons, you know,
that's
whatever.
fine.
Okay, so I think the part that confused me was I was always assuming that the bishop became the archbishop, but that's not true.
No, because
He
the
shows
bishop
up later,
in Grishet.
and he's the bishop in Grishet.
But I think he also kind of does, when he's in Grisset, he says, all the other places have fallen, so I'm practically the archbishop by default at this point. Well, what he actually says is, I am the church.
Yeah.
But
Because he's completely self-absorbed and thinks he basically thinks he's the Messiah, which is like an interesting like commentary on certain people within power groups.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're like, oh well, you know, this thing, it's all about God, but really, you know, it's actually all about me.
Mm-hmm. Which defeats the purpose
Of the whole thing.
Yeah, when the demons are in the church killing him, and they, you know, there is no God here. Like you are, you know, God's love is not unconditional. They do not love us
Because
and they do not love you. Because we're the
basically
same, pretty much.
Forsaken him by saying, you know, I am the church. They're mine.
Yeah.
Because before that, when he's, you know, talking to Belmont, he's like, the people of this city are mine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the Lord's. Like, you don't put, like, if you are a true believer of God and all the, you know, all the shit, you don't put yourself above.
Yeah, one of the things he would say a lot was like, they will do what I say through his words.
Yes.
Like, it's not, they will do what he says through like me messaging speaking for him, you know, like, because I was told it's, they're going to do what I say because, you know, like, it's almost like I command God.
Yeah.
You know,
Which really is it's a common theme throughout a lot of stories that really explore the evils of religion and
The corruption.
The corruption is a better word. Thank you. Of how religion can. At its core, it can be a really good thing, but then you get the flip side of people that abuse the power, and I like that narrative that a lot of these stories kind of like weave in and out. Another one that comes to mind is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Where the main villain is this very pious man, but yet he talks about wanting to rape the gypsy woman, and then he blames her for wanting to rape her.
Which there was a little bit of a potential talk about maybe I kind of saw it as maybe some sexual misconduct because the bishop and Grist said that he was moved to Grist because he had a disagreement with the archbishop on clerical. What was it? Something not clerical, like discipline, which to me sounds like they caught somebody doing something like something like that, and then he wanted to punish them, and the other guy was like, Maybe he caught the Archbishop
said,
himself doing
he
it,
also said the Archbishop had interests.
Yeah,
that were
yeah.
outside of the purview of the church.
Isn't that what they were? Who was he talking to?
He was talking to the mayor.
It was the mayor.
Yeah, it was the
that
mayor
was talking about having interest.
What
in,
the fuck was the Trevista or whatever?
Chemistry or whatever.
No, what was the name of that?
Targarist was like something like that.
Started with a T for sure.
We really should have we needed to make recordings
attention.
of all these so we can
map,
say the names, and get a map, all that stuff.
Visual aids.
Yeah. I think it was Targarist was the name of the city. Targariste. Yeah, there we go.
Like that.
But yeah, I really like that narrative that explores the corruption in the church and how it's not always a good thing.
It's a common theme. Like it happens a lot in media. I mean, it happens a lot in real life, but
yeah, and I think obviously one of the main reasons I like it's because I'm an atheist and I have seen that corruption and people just follow it blindly, like you often see in the narrative, and it's this is real obvious to me, but so of course it appeals to me because I've already seen it and
I watched this fucking video. What was it? Maybe yesterday or the day before. It was this televangelist. He was basically giving a deposition about tax evasion, and they were asking him about all this shit. It was like, so why do you have 3 cars? Why do you have a BMW, a Mercedes, and a Rolls Royce? He's like, well, they're for the ministry.
Yeah.
Why? And he has a $3 million house and spends $30,000 across 3 years on suits and shit. It's why? Well, because I got to look good on TV.
Because the Lord wants it.
Yeah.
I think there's a big the corruption of the church is a huge theme in this. But there's also little bastions of light that some of the people are true believers, right? Because let's say, Belmont, we're in Grist, episode 4. We're having the big fight in Belmont, in Grist. Mm-hmm. Belmont is trying to teach Trevor Belmont.
Yes.
We're just going to call him Belmont because my name is Trevor, and we're going to get confused real fast.
So Trevor was there.
Yeah,
and what?
So Belmont is, teaching all of the villagers, here's how we're going to fight these demons. We are going to stand up. Because this is basically what the church should have been doing from the first part, is we are going to...
No shit.
Be fighting these demons instead of... they were blaming this group of speakers, which are kind of nomadic people. Some of them are magicians. They're storytellers, they're like gypsies.
Sort of like gypsies, but they specify in a spoken word history.
Yeah.
They refuse to have their words put to paper. They keep stories and hidden knowledge by teaching their own.
Yeah, exactly.
Through vocal passage. I don't know.
History.
There we go. Oral history. Thank you. It's there's a fucking term for this, and I can't remember it.
Yeah. So Belmont is teaching all these people how to fight off demons.
Yes.
Take your swords, rub it with salt and stuff like that. And then he goes, I need a minister ordained by the church.
Yes.
Somebody comes up and he goes, I need you to draw water and
you know what to do with it.
You know what to do with it, right?
For the aspiration.
Yeah. And so he makes holy water. So obviously there is a true believer somewhere there.
I also thought it was funny that Belmont was surprised that it actually worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's because, he's seen the only people that other than
fighting the church.
Exactly. The only people other than demons and a cyclops that he's fought in the whole series up to this point were fucking priests and a couple farmers that were like, you're a Belmont, you're a black magician.
Well, he killed a cyclops, okay? So
that's what I'm saying. Other than demons and a cyclops. He's fought the church and a couple farmers.
And the church.
Yep.
A couple brother cousins, and
they were brother cousins.
God damn it!
Constantly
you may have
about fucking goats and sheep.
We might have the same father, but you came out of my aunt.
Yeah, exactly. Weird.
They were also discussing one of their friends fucking his sheep. So
fucking a goat, and then fucking a goat almost to death.
Yeah.
And then another guy comes in later and like, hey, we were just talking about you finding a sheep.
Yeah. Did you see any attractive sheep on your way in? Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, and Belmont's whip is consecrated too.
Yes.
So obviously, I don't think he did that himself. Somebody else would have had to consecrate that.
It's part of his family.
Is it part of it? It's just a family
So
thing.
like the Belmonts, especially in like the lore for everything, because it doesn't really explain a whole lot of it in the games, but there's a little bit of dialogue and stuff in those, but they're mostly just the action adventure platformers.
Yeah.
But they like collect knowledge and ancient weaponry. So basically, it's like an heirloom that's been passed down, and they found out through testing it basically that it works on evil monsters.
All right. Cool.
They get into that more in season 2.
Yeah.
Okay. But this is
Most definitely. This is season 1.
this
the
is
first
season
4.
1. Yeah.
First 4. And the season 2 is longer, isn't it?
Yeah, so season 1 is only 4 episodes, and then season 2 comes in with 8 episodes, which I liked season 2 way better than I liked season 1.
See,
All right.
I really like this season just because it's like so quick to action, but it also has like a lot of backstory in it at the same time.
Yep.
And I don't remember. I remember like I think maybe we watched half of season 2, but anyway,
there are a few slow episodes with season 2.
Right, because it's twice as long. So
yeah, so like a mild spoiler is that they actually go back to the Belmont estate.
yeah,
And then you actually learn a lot more about the history of the
you
Belmonts.
see like kind of the idea, like oh hey, they have a huge library and armory of all this like ancient shit, and so that's why they know about monsters. Because like he says when he fights the Cyclops, he's like, oh shit, it's a stone
Right out
Ides-
of my great grandfather's
bestiary.
descriptions or whatever.
right out of the,
Bestiary,
right out of the bestiary. Only he says bestiary, and
Yeah,
it
I thought
also
that
like
was weird.
like the closed caption also said bestiary, but it's a bestiary.
Yeah.
It could be.
Come on, we play Dungeons and Dragons. We know what a
Yeah.
bestiary is.
And I've seen it spelled as bestiary
I have
before,
too.
but I always
Yeah.
pronounced it as bestiary still.
Oh, maybe it is bestiary, but in like D&D and stuff, I know like a lot of the titles for the books they use kind of like
Listen.
They're derived.
Well, they use like literary God damn it, I can't fucking use words this morning.
This is like your one job too.
I know. They use whatever they want. Anyway,
Literary puns.
well, yeah, they like they just spell things differently because they can. So then, it's a bestiary, but it's got beasts in it. So why don't we call it a bestiary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be
We're probably
why
wrong
we know
here.
it.
But also, we're
That
from
way.
the Midwest, so I just figure like if we mispronounce things, like it's fine.
Well, I mean,
'Cause
Corey
people
says
use our-
rural, so
Rural,
Yeah, we live in a rural county.
a rural county.
Rural county.
Rural.
Rural.
Do you also wash your clothes in the creek?
Listen, we're not going to talk about how I wash my clothes. I also color with crowns.
Yeah,
crowns.
crowns.
Yep.
That's probably how I say it.
Crayola crowns.
God damn.
Hey, you say fur instead of for. Like, hey, you got a phone call. It's for you instead of for you.
For you. For
Yeah.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff.
F-E-R.
Yeah.
F-E-R.
I'm just gonna work on getting my accent thicker. Get that real thick Hoosier accent.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I notice I'll dip into like a little bit of Southern, especially if I'm like hanging out with my family.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's because they're like from the South, but as far as I know, we're all from Indiana. So like every once in a while,
There's hill jack in this fucking state, man.
Yeah.
It's in there.
I dip a little Southern, but I think I'm growing out of it.
Yeah, well, it's weird. I work with a mother and her son. Like they both work at the same place as me.
Yeah.
The mother just talks like straight, kind of Midwestern accent, perfectly fine, and her son kind of has a Southern accent. It's weird. Like I was like, you grew up around here. Why do you talk with such a drawl? Like it's now I'm kind of starting to make fun of him, and it's like He probably has like an actual speech impediment. I'm going to feel really bad. But
I think some of it depends on like where you go to school too.
yeah, I think he might have gone to school more of a.
So I went to Clinton Central, so there was all kinds of like Hicks and farm boys.
I knew there was a reason I didn't like you.
Well, see, like
that's what it is.
I went to school in a an inner city, and then a
Mr.
small
Prep school over here.
small rural town, and then
Rural.
I went to a you call it a prep school, but it was more like a weird.
It's a public school.
Yeah, it is a public school.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because you went too, didn't you?
Yeah, I went to it as well. It's like I would call it like a public boarding school.
Yeah.
So
It's almost like a weird social experiment.
it really is. Especially because you go to school in the same place. It's like a laboratory school for the university.
Yeah.
So the laboratory school is literally a social experiment
Right.
for teachers because they like pick it up randomly and like do teaching experiments there.
Right.
And then you also have these kids that you came in from all over the state who are like supposed to be like the top tier.
Yeah, and
Quote unquote.
So like there's like a social experiment school, and then there's like a social experiment that uses that school as well. It's fucking weird because Burris is different from the academy, and the academy is like sort of uses Burris, and it's like two guys doing two different experiments in the same lab.
It's just all awkward all around.
Yeah.
Anyway, so bestiary versus bestiary. I'm cool with bestiary.
Whatever. Anyway.
works.
But yeah.
They definitely explain more of their history in season 2.
Season 2's got the Belmont history.
Yeah.
Well, because I felt like most of this, I mean, there's plenty of action in these 4 episodes.
Yeah.
Most of it felt just like backstory to me. It was all leading up to, we get the trio, right?
Yeah.
We get Sypha, we got Belmont, and then we get Alucard.
Alucard.
I was about to say Adrian, but like it's Alucard.
Yeah, whatever.
Alucard.
Dracula backwards.
Dracula backwards.
And they're going to stop Dracula from killing the whole human race, basically. Which,
That's
if
the plan.
If Alucard was the son of Dracula, and I assume, Sarah's Lisa. There we go. Lisa is his mother. Is he only half vampire?
Yes.
Yes.
He is a half vampire.
He's basically he's basically Blade, but before Blade. But not actually before Blade, because I think Blade was in the 70s. I think was his
when is Son of Dracula?
origin. I don't know.
I think that's what Alucard's based off of.
His son of Dracula. Okay. So Alucard would therefore not be as powerful as Dracula, and Dracula is super powerful.
Or possibly more powerful.
Oh, that's a good point. By the way, I loved Alucard's like crypt at the end. He's got this stone coffin, and it's obviously got some sort of machinery underneath it that can raise and lower this coffin, and then behind it you see these like tubs of blood, which is you would assume is basically he's asleep in there with like an IV in, you would think, into these
more or
tubs
less,
of blood. Yeah. So he can like just be in this state for eternity.
You're really going to like season 2.
And a lot of the same aesthetic as that.
Yeah.
Most of season 2 has shots back and forth between going into the castle and like them trying to get to the castle.
Okay.
And pretty much the entirety of the castle is like his little tomb.
Yeah, just watch a Let's Play of Symphony of the Night.
Let's play. It's kind of a steampunk is definitely not the right descriptor,
But
for
it is. I mean, it's like sort of like
it's more Victorian punk. I would say.
It's like Victorian steampunk.
Uh-huh.
It's like Victorian tinged steampunk, basically, instead of like
Which
Western
to me, that's
tinged.
just regular steampunk.
Yeah, I don't know. Like a lot of it recently has been like Western.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is like Western is just Victorian in the desert, but whatever.
Right.
Which I personally, I'm a big fan of the aesthetic. I know some people just hate it. I think maybe it's because of it's the
fantastic.
fan base behind it. Sometimes
Yeah,
it's a little.
it's always what the problem is,
Right?
Because like the good parts of basically any fan or fandom is the good stories in it, right? So like there's all these good stories that have this flavor, but then you have the neckbeards or which
Gatekeepers.
Yeah, you have all these people that are just like, oh, well, it's better than whatever you like and shit like that, and that's why people don't
well,
like
and
stuff.
it's just like, like if you know that somewhere this Friday at a Friday Night Magic, there's a dude wearing a trench coat and a top hat with a gear hot glued gun to it, and he's like, I'm steampunk, guys. And he hasn't showered all week.
Yeah.
And you're like...
Yeah, that's where the neckbeard part comes in.
I hate this aesthetic now, because you smelled the dude and you're like...
Did I shave my neck this week? I don't remember. Fuck.
Dude, I shave every day.
So to circle back, one of the trivia I found here, it says if you take the name Alucard and spell it backwards, it turns out to be Dracula, which we talked about earlier.
What?
But... this happens in the games, as well as it is a direct reference to a character in Son of Dracula, which came out in 1943.
Okay.
I would say before Blade.
Yeah, that's definitely before Blade, but I'm curious about the, like, I know it's not, like, really derived at all from it, but there's obvious, like, similarities. You know, a half vampire that is going after vampires, shit like that.
Which that might be from Son of Dracula.
Yeah, I don't know that story. So,
but the whole season here is just kind of leading up into this team up.
It's a lot of world building.
World building. That's kind of what we're looking at.
And team building, because like it's about that last scene, where he's like, do you know the whole story of the sleeping soldier, where he's awakened by a scholar and a hunter, and Trevor's like, I didn't hear that part. Fucking speakers.
Yeah, right.
So here's another fun fact about that. Says after his fight with Trevor Belmont, Alucard tells Sypha that the sleeping warrior legend is apparently a speaker's message from the future. Alucard then asks Sypha, do you know the whole story? And if you watch, she actually blushes and confirms she does with some hesitation. And this is theorizing that this might be related to the fact that in Castlevania's video game history, Trevor and Sypha will marry and continue the Belmont legacy.
Yep.
Ah, okay. Well, he says multiple times, my name is Trevor Belmont, last son of the Belmonts, right? So you figure if first of all, he got kicked in the stones like 4 times. Like,
oh my God. That's my favorite part of this season. He gets kicked in the stones like 4 times and he's like, please leave my testicles alone. And then in the fucking fight with Alucard, he knees Alucard in the nuts. He's like, this isn't a bar fight. Have some class.
So to get back, I really liked what they set up with like Trevor and the Belmonts and then the team up.
Yeah.
You were talking about the joke of like getting kicked in the stones and stuff.
Yeah, no, that's like my favorite part of like the whole thing. Because like I really enjoy, I mean, we've talked about this on this show in particular. I really enjoy humor and violence. So like that's and titties, but there hasn't been any nudity yet, but that's my jam.
Nudity in season 2 or not?
Titties, violence, and humor.
There's definitely way more violence in season 2.
Oh yeah,
let's do it. There's all kinds of gratuitous violence in season 2.
I mean, I feel like there's plenty of gratuitous violence in this. He cuts off a guy's finger with his whip, and then later in the same scene... Accidentally, yeah. He's a little out of practice. Belmont. And then also...
I might be out of practice, but I'm stone cold sober.
Yeah.
It's because he almost got his ass beat by the drunk guys in the bar.
Well, he was still looking for beer at this point, by the way, guys.
Yeah.
He was looking to get drunk. As well as in that same fight scene with those priests, he knocks out the guy's eye. And my favorite thing is later he's running from the priests and gets the same eye, and he like grapples the guy that's missing the eye, turns him around, and then the archers are shooting at him. They shoot him in the other eye.
Yeah,
the
human shield, and like he gets hit in like the shoulder and then in the other eye.
Yeah, it's like that guy is not doing so well. Huh?
Also, hilarious part right there, which we talked about, was the fucking he like chucks a spear.
Death cry?
Yeah, he chucks a spear at the top back archer, and he accidentally shoots the front lower archer in the back, and that dude's like, oh!
Yeah, we were talking about like. Well, what do you think that director did? He like just pulled like the sound guy. He's like, just do some like like noise. And the guy's like, and he's like, perfect, first try, first take.
Amazing.
I mean, it's probably from a sound library, I would think.
Even it wasn't a Wilhelm scream, so
yeah, which I don't think we heard in this. I bet we get a Wilhelm scream eventually. It's got to happen, right?
Somebody's got to fall off a parapet on a fucking castle or something.
I don't think it happens.
I'm going to edit it in so it does happen.
Yeah.
Now.
Just put it in this episode.
Yeah. Well, it's going at the end for sure.
Yeah. So on that note, I really like the way they do a lot of the fight choreography in this too.
Oh yes,
especially when he's like fighting the big Cyclops, and like they show all the whip maneuvers, and like he throws the fucking sword and it sticks into Cyclops. He's like, "You're dead. You're dead. You just don't know it yet. You're dead."
Realize you're dead.
Yeah.
He like takes the whip and pulls the sword out, and then like fucking whips it around before he kicks it in its eye.
First of all, he runs. I think does a kick off of a pillar.
Yeah.
Runs up the stone Siffa.
Yep.
Jumps like backflips, gets the sword wrapped around, pulls it back, does another flip to like throw it into the Cyclops' eye.
Kicks it.
Oh yeah, he flips it up and then kicks it into the eye.
Yeah, he pulls it out of its chest towards him and then does like a flip kick, hits the sword, and it flips into its eye.
Which, I'm going to be honest, up until that moment of this series, I was not into the animation style.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Up into this moment, the animation reminds me of like, first thing that came to mind was like a little bit updated like Princess Mononoke, or like a like Ghost in the Shell kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where it's almost that like
very anime,
but I definitely had a Western feel to it.
Yes.
But it was that 3D, like definitely depth of field comes from 3D, but like a 2D kind of character directly in front of you.
Yeah.
It's kind of how I was feeling about that, and I was like,
painted backgrounds with like flat color animated characters.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I'm not super into this. Like, I don't feel like it's that fluid. The first few scenes, I felt like maybe the frame rate was a little low too. I kind of felt like it was choppy.
Was a little choppy. It is choppy.
Yeah, and I wasn't too into the art, too into the colors. And then we got to that fight scene with the Cyclops, and I was like, this is badass.
So I got three things. The worst choppy scene was probably when all the mob is walking up to the building that the speakers were staying in.
Yes.
That was really bad. Mm-hmm. Okay. A really awesome thing about the Cyclops thing scene that I really liked that was just like an animation thing was his eye beam.
Oh, yeah,
like the color of his eye beam.
It was like multicolor rainbow.
It was like iridescent, but it also, like, the animation of it had almost like a liquid feel. Because, like, it was a solid, like, light beam, but then when it would hit things, it would, like, cause, like, liquid splash and shit, which was
splash damage, literally.
And then, interesting, like, story thing from that scene was he ran up her, like, solid stone body to do that flip kick, right?
Yeah.
And then later when she comes to, she's like, "Did you climb on me?" So, like, the people that are petrified are aware, at least somewhat, in some way of what's going on around them, which is interesting.
Well, he kind of alluded to that when he tells her what happened. He's like,
right, it feeds on your terror while you're
trapped in your own
body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's what that kind of helps explain away, like why she knows what happened, but also is still somewhat like unsure of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
I'm sure if you're petrified, you can't like look in other directions. You're probably just staring in one direction. You get kind of tunnel vision.
Yeah, just the colors of that scene, the fluidity of the movement, the just the feel of it. I guess it wasn't really that fluid when I kind of think back on it. It was definitely choppy, but it was like it was almost like action cuts,
right?
Like, but so like John Wick and stuff has the scenes where it's all one shot. It felt like a one shot, but somehow it still had action cuts in it. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but it was directed very, very well.
Yes.
It was animated very well in that particular scene. And that made me kind of... I'm not in love with the art style or anything.
Sure.
It's still kind of a... I mean, I like the steampunk aesthetic and everything. And if there's more of that in season 2, I'm sure I'm going to be like straight up into that.
Yeah.
But
right.
As of right now, the rest of it's just kind of a little bland to me. When Dracula first appears a year later and the blood starts falling from the sky, it was okay until it started hitting people, and then it just like soaked in really fast and kind of awkwardly, and I was like, oh, this this doesn't look great right now.
So the worst part about that for me was if you watch some of their reactions of the people in the crowd, like some of them just had zero reaction to getting soaked in blood.
Yeah, we kind of talked about it. A couple people were just like, huh, well,
which
okay.
I think
this is mildly inconvenient.
Yeah.
Stuff like that is
I just did my hair.
A pretty consistent problem with Netflix animation in general. One other thing that I remember is, like, have you guys seen Disenchanted, the Matt Groening?
Yeah.
There is no background sound at all in that.
So do you think that's like a budget thing?
I think it was either a budget thing or it was hey, your release date is this.
Yeah,
you need to get it out the door.
A crunch
time thing.
Somewhere between crunch and budget
Yeah.
for both. Because like you also when you do the animation like that the more frames per second you do, the more expensive it is, obviously, and the more reference frames you're going to have to do too if you're going to have fluid motion. Because like, I mean, I think that's something that we haven't really gone into super deep in a lot of the animation we've talked about on the show.
Some of it we have. It just depends on the episode.
A lot more on the In Love and Death, or the Love, Death, and Robots, whatever. Episodes we talked a lot more about the animation styles and stuff, and some of the like textures and stuff. I remember we talked about the some weird stuff in the the werewolf episode. But when you're animating, depending on how many frames per second you're trying to do, you have artists that do the reference frames, right? And then you send it to somebody else to fill in the blanks.
Right, yeah. So what a lot of them, and we actually have talked about this. I don't think you were on the episode we talked about it.
Right.
But it might have even been the Cinderella episode.
Okay.
I've talked about it a little bit. But you have your artists that draw what they call keyframes.
Yeah.
And it's like you'll have them, they'll draw the character with their arm up here, and then you'll have them draw their character with the arm out here, like say they're throwing a baseball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and they'll have
gesturing with his hand above his head and then
straight out in front of him. So you'll have your main artist draw A straight up and B straight out, and then you'll have your interns or your lower level artists will come in
or another studio in general, like because like a lot of there's a lot of studios in like Asia that do the fill-in. I don't know what it exactly
there's a term
called.
for it, but I'm not for sure.
But
it's like your transition shots.
Yeah, so like whoever the studio that's creating the show, their artists will do the keyframes, and then they'll send it to another studio, or if, like you said, they have interns or whatever, or lower tier artists, those guys will do all the fill in between, and like the higher fluidity that you want, the more keyframes you're going to have.
Yeah, because and again, going back to one of the things I talked about previously is with a regular show that you're filming with live action, it's literally just a camera taking a series of pictures, a series of still images, and then it plays those rapidly enough that you don't notice that there's a distance between the two. I mean, that's literally the definition of what film is.
Right.
But with animation, specifically hand-drawn animation, you have to draw each one of those, they're called cells, each one of those frames in by hand.
Right.
Anytime it's done by hand, you have to draw every single one of those in. So if you're doing something at 60 frames per second, that's 60 frames images in 1 second that go by, and you have to draw 60 images.
Yep.
And if you have, a piece of animation that lasts a full minute, that's 60 times 60.
360 images just to get a minute of
animation. Yeah. And like the perfect example I seen that illustrates
3600, right?
3600.
60 times 60. 6 times 6 is 36.
Yeah,
sorry. 3600, yeah. A lot more than 360. 10 times that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And that's still just for 1 minute.
Yeah, that's a lot of pictures.
And the example I seen recently online that illustrates that perfectly was a flipbook artist. A guy that just draws like little doodles on flipbooks, and then he flips through the pages. And you watch him draw everything, and he literally has to draw it all frame by frame, because that's what animation is at its heart. At its core is it's just a bunch of frames that are playing just like any other film. So, like, what you were saying, you don't want to have your main artists draw
right
3,600 frames for a minute to get just a minute of payoff. So you have them draw the keyframes, and then you have your lower tier or your other studio,
right,
whoever come in and they'll do your transition scenes. Now that's one reason why a lot of modern animation is done on a computer now, and a lot of it is not hand drawn anymore.
right.
Because with your 3D animation, you can position your characters in that position A, going back to our throwing a baseball. So you have the hand above the head. You can position your puppet, your character, your skeleton, your rigging above their head. And then you can have the other position be in B, straight out in front of them. And you can tell your program to fill in the difference. And it will automatically fill in the fluidity of moving the arm down.
Right. You put the skin on the rigging, and then tell it to follow the arc.
And then you have an animator go through and fix it up in any spots that potentially need fixed.
Yeah. So that's why a lot of stuff is going to like the 3D animation, or even they have some programs for like 2D puppeting. It's almost like a paper doll kind of thing. And that's why a lot of stuff is going to that, because it's way more cost effective and way less time consuming.
So was this hand drawn?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. There's a lot of stuff in here that makes me want to say yes, but then there's other stuff that makes me want to say no. So I mean, there's the 3D scenes that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. That's obviously not hand drawn. But a lot of the characters themselves look like they could be hand-drawn, but at the same time, they also maintain a pretty decent sense of, like, scale.
There were a couple spots where I thought the scale was off.
Yeah?
Particularly in the bar fight scene, because he's about the same size as the larger fellow, and then the guy that's like maybe not even a head taller than the fat guy that's his brother cousin. Did the chair just shit on you?
Yeah, the chair just took a shit on me real quick. Shane warned me about this before I used the chair, so now I'm sitting very far forward. It's fine.
But then like the brother cousin comes over to him, and he's like 2 feet taller than Belmont, and you're like, what? And then once he gets punched, he like flies backwards, and the perspective is off. Like the room doesn't feel real anymore because of how he's laying versus the perspective of the lines of the floor and the ceiling and where the fireplace is and its size. It looks like he's closer than it is, and if he was closer, as close as he looks, then that fireplace is about like 16 inches wide.
Well, here we go from Wikipedia, but it doesn't have a source for this, so I don't know how entirely true it is. Just the show is produced using 2D hand-drawn animation, taking cues from Ninja Scroll and Vampire Hunter D, with staff members that previously worked on Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. So Wikipedia says it was hand-drawn.
Yeah, I mean, it does remind me a lot of Ninja Scroll as far as like the feel, especially of like the blood and stuff. If you guys have watched Ninja Scroll.
I have not. You guys have talked about it a lot.
I think it's really good, but it's kind of weird because it's like it's kind of like a 80s rated R movie where it's just got like a little bit of sex in it, enough to where it's like there's a part that's kind of softcore, Mm-hmm. So you're like, oh, am I watching hentai right now? Should I feel dirty? But and a couple of the characters are real rapey. So.
Well, potentially some of the characters in this show are real rapey, too. I mean, they raped a goat, so that's...
Yeah.
Well, I think that's kind of... I've seen a lot of Japanese anime where characters get a little rapey.
Yeah.
Even some of the stuff that's, like, considered pretty mild has characters that are a little rapey.
Oh, I mean, that's just, like, a thing in anime in general, is, like, there's a lot of, like, weird shit.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even, like, stuff that isn't... necessarily like kids shouldn't watch this, kind of like just characters that are like, hey, I'm like in high school and I hang out with all these older ladies and like they're always hitting on me and the whole show is just like half of it is watching their titties bounce up and down because all of them have double Ds and don't wear bras and shit.
Yep. And then you always have an excuse to do a hot springs episode.
Yep.
And
a beach episode.
A beach episode.
Yep.
Just so you can get your characters naked and you're hiding the nakedness with steam. That's your hot springs episodes. And there's the other ones with the beach where you're got the nakedness and you're just trying to show them in a bikini. As small bikini as possible.
Well,
that's the only purpose of those episodes.
I mean, I'm not upset by it. Can we have one of those episodes in this one? Because I really want to see
episode?
Belmont just like... You know he's got a beer gut, right? Like, you know he's not, like, actually that ripped or anything.
That'd be great.
Right?
He's got, like, a little tiny beer gut and, like, love handles, but he still wears, like, a fucking Speedo.
I want to say he has, like, a heart tattoo that says mom somewhere, too. You know? Like, a really drunken, bad tattoo.
Wow.
Yeah. You can totally see it, though. I believe that character has that.
Yeah. Sure.
So, if you read it upside down, it says, wow.
God damn.
All right, I guess with that we should probably get to reviews. What did you think, Trevor, of season 1?
Of season 1,
given that you have never seen it.
Given I've never seen it, I would like to go see season 2. I'm not 100% sold on this series yet.
Okay.
I would say partially maybe it's because I don't like Castlevania as a video game, so I never really got into it in the first place. Right now, I feel like the story's interesting. I was gripped for those few episodes of like, what's going to happen next? How are they going to? Are they going to be able to defeat the demons? You know, and for right now, it's kind of stalled to a point where maybe they can continue on. Maybe Grist is still completely screwed, like everybody's going to die there. But now we've got our trio that is going to stop the larger horde in Dracula.
Yep. Right.
And so I'm definitely going to go watch season 2 at some point.
Yeah.
I know that our ratings on this show are typically, would you subscribe to something to watch it specifically?
Yep.
Would you buy it? Or would you just pass on it completely?
Yeah, more or less.
More or less. And I would say if you're like a big anime fan, if you're a fan of the video games, and you don't have Netflix for some weird reason in 2019, you should subscribe to Netflix with this being one of the shows that you're going to watch, at least for a month or two.
Yeah.
Personally...
Get that free month.
Yeah, get that free month. I'm not a huge anime fan. I'm not going to buy the collector's edition of this or anything like that.
Sure.
But it's a nice little perk on my Netflix subscription. It was a fun watch. Let's see how season 2. I can see myself getting bored with it, but as of right now, it was fun. It was good. Animation style, like I said earlier, was not my favorite. It seemed a little bland, but some of those action scenes just, man, they just clicked with me. That was fun action right there. Watching him kill that Cyclops, as well as the alley fight scene with the 2 priests where he cut off the finger and then got the eye. Like, what? That was also... I think when he got the finger, I went, ooh! Like, you guys heard me do it. Like, I was like, yeah, that feels... If I want some good action, animated action, this is the show to watch right now.
Yeah. Shane?
I agree with pretty much all that. I think there was some really good dialogue in this. There were a lot of funny bits that we brought up a couple of them, specifically the bar scene and the Alucard fight. But I think if you liked the games or you've played the games or know anything about the games, this will be right up your alley. If you just like vampire shit or bloody action and medieval fantasy stuff, totally up your alley. There's a billion reasons to subscribe to Netflix, and this is one of them. Season 1's really good. I don't remember everything I've seen of season 2, but what I remember was good, so I suggest subscribing to Netflix if you haven't already. Watch this somewhere in there. Again, I don't buy a whole lot of DVDs or Blu-rays. I pretty much mostly just the Marvel shit.
Yeah.
So I can't suggest buying it. And it's already on a streaming service. That's usually the other reason that I would buy something if it's not on a streaming service that I have or that I really want to subscribe to. So I would subscribe to Netflix, and this would be one of the shows I would watch.
Yeah. I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. I really like this. First season is not the best season. I've seen season 1 and I've seen season 2. I tried to watch this show once before, just independently, and I got maybe halfway into episode 1 and I just gave up on it.
Wow, really?
Yeah. I just couldn't get into it. There was the whole stuff with like Lisa and Dracula, and I just couldn't get into it. And I was like, I'm gonna have to put this down. And then I came back after season 2 came out, and I heard so many people talk about it, and I was like, I have to watch this, I guess, and I have to see what's going on, see what everybody's talking about. And then once I got past that hump of like, okay, this is kind of slow, and I actually got into the stuff with Trevor Belmont, and that's when it really started to pick up for me. And I was like, okay, now I see the appeal. And especially once it got into season 2 stuff is when it really started to hit home for me. And I really started to like this series a lot. Mm-hmm. So season 1, if you can sit through the 4 episodes, at least the first 2, because I think it really starts to pick up in like 3 and 4 for this first season.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
If you can make it through the first 2 episodes to get to 3 and 4 and then on into season 2, I think there's definitely a lot of good stuff here and a lot of stuff I really like. I wouldn't go as far as to say that if you don't already have Netflix, get Netflix just for this. But as you guys have said, there's a shit ton of stuff on Netflix, so you should have Netflix anyway because there's all kinds of good stuff to watch on Netflix. And as far as a Netflix original series, this is pretty good. I'm definitely pretty impressed with it. If it came out on a box set later, I might pick it up. I wouldn't rush out to buy the season 1 Blu-ray. Probably wouldn't rush out to buy the season 2 Blu-ray. But if there's like, a 5-10 season box set of all of it, I might buy that.
Yeah, it's already been renewed for season 3 as well. So
yeah, if they keep going with it and go on from there, I might keep up with it and might eventually buy the collector's edition or something. Because I do really like this, but I don't know that it's worth it and it's where I want it to be at right now.
Yeah, there isn't a release date yet, but what I was just reading could say the end of this year into the beginning of next year, because they started recording before season 2 aired for voice acting. So
cool,
nice.
Yeah, I definitely look forward to watching season 2 with you guys. Season 2 is definitely my favorite out of the 2 seasons so far.
Yeah, you got a choice between 2, but
yeah. That's the better one.
The one thing I would disagree with you guys on was I was really into it from the get, but I also I love vampire shit, and
that's fair.
Yeah,
so, especially like this kind of vampire shit. If you put fucking glitter on them, I'm not into it.
Yeah, I just like I said, I wasn't into the animation style, and episode 3 was when the fighting kicked up, and I think this animation did so great with the fighting and the action, and so that's why to me it was like that's when I started to be like, ugh, let's get into this.
I get that. I totally understand that. I liked all 4 episodes. So,
all right,
yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up for this episode. Definitely stick with us. We'll talk about season 2. We'll probably split it up into 2 episodes, since season 2 is twice as long as season 1 is. If you have any other recommendations you want us to see or listen to, make sure to hit us up at DraftyQ on Twitters.
Yep.
We also have an email that is draftyq@gmail.com.
Yep.
We have our personal Twitters and Facebooks that you can hit us up on if you want to reach us individually. Otherwise, we definitely check the main company account quite a bit.
Sure do.
Yeah. Definitely looking for more recommendations, thoughts, questions, comments, concerns. Hit us up.
Complaints, adulation, whatever.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. That's all, folks.